is more than 1.7 million pounds of thrust. Sonia, that is impressive firepower.
Yeah, and rockets like Falcon 9 don't use all that thrust just to go straight up. Early in flight, Falcon 9 performs a gravity turn, which is a smooth pitch maneuver.
RP1 load complete.
Hearing good callouts over the nets, which is a smooth pitch maneuver that tilts the rocket sideways to build up horizontal velocity. You may hear this call out about 10 seconds into launch as the vehicle is pitching downrange. And once the first stage completes its portion of the mission, it shuts down and separates.
A stage rocket like Falcon 9 sheds that booster to eliminate the weight and uncover the Merlin vacuum engine on stage 2. To reach orbit, the vehicle needs to go fast, hitting an orbital velocity of about 28,000 kilometers an hour. And that's just to keep it from falling back to Earth due to gravity. That's fast enough to lap the Earth in about 90 minutes or fly from New York to here in Hawthorne, California in under 10 minutes, which is about 7 times faster than the U.S. Air Force's SR-71 Blackbird.
After stage separation, today's booster will be landing at Landing Zone 1 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. This particular booster will be returning to Earth for its 3rd time. The second stage takes over from there, powered by a single Merlin vacuum engine, also known as the MVAC. With its extended nozzle and optimized design, the MVAC drives maximum performance, producing 220,000 pounds of thrust in the vacuum of space. On today's mission, we'll light that engine 4 times before deploying the final payload into orbit.
Now, so much of what makes Falcon 9 remarkable happens in flight.
SpaceX for countdown check-in brief.
Dragon's with you.
Okay, Xena, we have healthy Dragon, healthy Falcon 9, just like last time, so prop load is proceeding nominally. We do have one watch item that has popped up. There is a pop-up storm cell that is just to the north of the pad. Currently not violating any LCCs, but we are monitoring this particularly closely as it's moving offshore. We'll let you know if it starts trending towards blocking launch today, but again, not expecting that at this time.
Dragon copies all. We've got a healthy Dragon, healthy Falcon. We're proceeding towards launch. Only watch item is a storm cell that is north of the pad moving offshore. We'll continue monitoring, but otherwise looking great.
That's a good readback.
And great communications there from the team here at SpaceX on the ground in Hawthorne, monitoring. What we've been keeping an eye on throughout the broadcast here today is that weather popping up, but everything else looks strong and healthy. The Falcon 9, the capsule itself, and the crew, they're still ready to roll as we're now about 17 minutes away from the launch. Now, talking back to Falcon 9, and what remarkable happens is what happens in flight. It's the first stage, landing itself on land or on a drone ship in the middle of the ocean, the fairings that can parachute back, all ready for another flight to space. Every part of Falcon 9 is a part of a larger design that comes together to do one thing, and that's escape Earth's gravity.
And getting to space is the first step to building our multi-planetary future. At the top of Falcon 9 today, the crew is sitting inside Dragon Endeavour. Dragon has played a significant role in advancing our future in space by safely transporting crew to and from the International Space Station. There are currently 5 Dragon spacecraft supporting human spaceflight missions: Endeavour, Resilience, Endurance, Freedom, and our 5th and final Dragon, Grace, which just launched the Axiom 4 mission last month. Designed with safety as the highest priority, Dragon is capable of carrying up to 7 passengers to and from Earth orbit.
The Dragon spacecraft has
Stage 2 LOX load has started.
16 Draco thrusters, as you heard that great call out there, as the fueling continuing to make its way into the rocket. And those 16 Draco thrusters can be used in space to help navigate the spacecraft to its destination, each providing 90 pounds of force. Now, that doesn't include the 8 Super Draco thrusters used for an abort, which are no longer active once the crew is in orbit.
To date, Dragon has been to orbit 53 times, including 48 trips to the International Space Station and 18 human spaceflight missions. And as we mentioned earlier, today's Dragon, Endeavour, has been pretty busy, having also flown NASA's Crew 2 mission, Axiom 1, and NASA's Crew 6 and Crew 8 missions. Overall, for the Dragon fleet, this will be Dragon's 49th visit to the space station and its 19th human spaceflight mission overall, and the 5th Dragon flight this year. Dragon is the first private spacecraft to take humans to the orbiting lab, having flown 300,000 pounds of cargo and more than 1,000 experiments to space, as well as 70 crew members representing 20 countries. Our versatile Dragon spacecraft can autonomously dock with the International Space Station when outfitted with a docking adapter, which is just how it's configured for today's flight. And when it's not going to the space station and it's in free flyer mode, the docking adapter can be swapped out for a cupola, as it was back during the Inspiration 4 mission. Another option we have is the Skywalker hardware, which supports extravehicular activities or spacewalks, as we did during the Polaris Dawn mission. And amazingly, there has been a Dragon in space for 1,358 consecutive days since Crew 3.
Now, with T-0 coming up in about 14 minutes or so, our teams are continuing to do a series of system checks to ensure Dragon and the Falcon 9 are ready, with fueling continuing to get underway. And again, we're monitoring that weather that the teams here at SpaceX are keeping an eye on and have been relaying up to the crew. So let's check in with Ronnie with the latest.
Thanks, Joseph. So as you've heard, we are still on track for an on-time launch today, and we're monitoring lots of different factors as we get closer to liftoff. Most importantly, both Dragon and Falcon 9, of course carrying our Crew 11 astronauts, continue to be healthy. You heard that we've wrapped up Stage 2 RP-1 loading, and that Stage 2 liquid oxygen loading also wrapped up on time at about 16.5 minutes to go. The launch escape system is also armed. That's, of course, the system designed to propel Dragon away from Falcon 9 in the unlikely event of an emergency. And the Eastern Range is monitoring keep-out zones along the flight ascent corridor and is tracking no issues for today's launch. Weather continues to be a watch item, so we'll keep an eye on that. But for now, we are go for the 6th mission of Dragon Endeavour. It is a fantastic milestone for Dragon, and here at SpaceX, we could not be more excited. So to add a little something extra to our celebration, I've got our Dragon plush hanging out with me here in front of Mission Control. Now, this guy is not the zero gravity indicator for today's mission, but do keep an eye out for that once Crew 11 reaches orbit. This is, though, a fun nod to all the successful flights that Dragon has made, and all of the crews that we have been so lucky to work with. I think this is a great way to celebrate today's flight milestone, and I really have appreciated joining you all. Thanks for joining me at the status desk for all of our coverage today. With that, go Dragon, go Crew 11, and I'm going to hand it back to Sandra for status update from Houston.
Thanks, Ronnie. That plush is cute. I'm going to have to get one for myself. Back here in the International Space Station Flight Control Room at NASA's Johnson Space Center in Houston, teams continue to work around the clock to monitor activities aboard the orbital outpost. Leading the team inside the room today is NASA Flight Director Scott Stover. The team in Mission Control and the team in Hawthorne, as well as the astronauts aboard the International Space Station, will track the autonomous docking of Dragon Endeavour when they enter into joint operations. This will happen when the spacecraft enters the approach ellipsoid, which is the invisible boundary stretching 4 by 2 by 2 kilometers that helps us monitor all arriving and departing spacecraft. It's essentially the neighborhood of the International Space Station. Once docked, crew members in both Dragon and aboard the International Space Station will perform a series of leak checks, and then will work to open the spacecraft's hatch for Crew 11 to float into the space station and begin their stay. We anticipate that the hatch will be opened about an hour and a half after docking occurs. When they enter the orbital outpost, crew will be greeted by the rest of the Expedition 73 crew and will come together for opening remarks. But for now, that's going to be all from us here in Mission Control for today, as the anticipation continues to build for launch in less than 20 minutes from now. So how's it looking on the Space Coast, Daryl?
Well, we've got a mix in the weather. There's some clouds that are building, but so far still looking good, okay for launch. It's a watch item at the moment, and so we're keeping our eyes to the skies. Also, this is a first for our broadcast team right here. An astronaut who once sat right here where Nick is sitting as a commentator is now minutes from flying to space. Zena Cardman was once in this very seat, the one that Nick Hague is sitting in now, less than a year ago. She was supporting Nick as he launched with Crew 9. She was originally set to command that mission, but when Crew 9 had the shift and had the change up of assignments, she had to step back to help get the team off the ground. And here's what she said, Nick, after watching you and your crew go into space.
Every crewed launch that I have ever watched has really brought me a lot of emotion. This one today was especially unique. I think it was hard not to watch that rocket lift off without thinking, that's my rocket and that's my crew. But I also know that I'm not the only person who can think that. Of course, we have Stephanie Wilson here today, but I mean, there are many, many people who made this mission happen, and there are people on orbit who will be taking this capsule home. And it makes me very proud to know that I am one of many people who can say, that's my crew, that's my rocket. Makes me really proud, makes me feel very connected to this mission that we all get to take part of. Go Crew 9.
An emotion-filled Zena Cardman in that moment, and she is going to give us some words any moment now.
Dragon SpaceX, confirm crew displays are configured for launch.
Your thoughts on hearing that after you launched?
SpaceX, Dragon, displays are configured for launch. It is our honor, our privilege, and our choice to take part in something much greater than any individual, but it's the individuals who make this endeavor great. To each of you at SpaceX and NASA, to our partners at JAXA and Roscosmos, to family, friends, and mentors, you fly with us today. Arigato gozaimasu. Spasibo большое. Thank you. With gratitude and focus, Crew 11 is ready.
And more words.
Crew 11, sentiment is the same on the ground from everyone staying here. We have enjoyed working with you in the preparation for the mission. Looking forward to doing the same in flight. Good luck. Enjoy the ride.
And more words from Zena Cardman. We just heard from her live.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like I started the show. There isn't any place I'd rather be than here today. What Zena said is so true, you know, and it's this palpable feeling that, hey, that's my crew. Those are my friends. You know, hey, that's my commander. And just to be here and know that, you know, I've done my small part to help support them and along their way, and there'll be more support that happens in the future. And to be able to see behind the scenes everybody else that is contributing to that is, that's what makes this all so special, is it's not about the individual. Spaceflight has nothing to do with individuals. It's all about us working together.
100%. Well said, Nick. And kudos to both of you for showing an immense amount of class. You signed up to do this role almost immediately after getting into space, and we heard from you saying, I want to be there for Zena. Thank you for being here. And go Crew 11. And so with just 7 minutes to go, a little over 7 minutes, we want to send it back to Hawthorne for the final countdown.
Thank you, Daryl. Thank you, Nick. And those were beautiful words from Zena Cardman. You can hear the emotions behind them and what they're looking forward to getting ready for launch. And they say Crew 11 is ready. As you mentioned, about 7 minutes and change to go until we have liftoff, and we're still awaiting the final propellant loading to complete, and then we'll get into engine chill, and more milestones will be along the way. It's going to be about a 9-minute ride to orbit, and then Dragon in the second stage will continue to coast for a few minutes after that once the first stage and second stage have performed. You'll be hearing some of those performance calls as we get into that final countdown, and then after liftoff. These are SpaceX flight controllers reporting on the trajectory, speed, booster, and performance, and the key milestones, but there are some other calls that you'll hear the crew make as well, especially after liftoff. The crew will report out a few number and letter combinations which mark different abort zones throughout the flight up the eastern seaboard. The first two, 1A and 1B, are abort modes available.
Has started.
And right on cue for the engine chill that has begun. And those first stage abort zones, again, 1A and 1B for that first stage. Next are 2A through E. Those will come into play once the second stage kicks in. They'll only hear that 2A call. And diverting a little bit from the other naming systems, we'll hear the call Shannon, which refers to Shannon, Ireland. This means that the crew could target off the coast of Ireland if they needed to abort late in that second stage burn. You'll hear these different calls throughout the flight uphill along the way, and the performance callouts from the guidance, navigation, and control officer, and also the propulsion lead. So we're coming up on T-minus 6.5 minutes. We heard that the engine chill is started, and that means that that small trickle of fuel making its way into the engine to prime it
Stage
for
1 fuel load
launch.
complete.
So we already heard that stage 1 engine chill has already started, which is a key process that prepares the engines for flight. Right now, the prop in the tanks is isolated from the engines. Sorry. The prop in the tanks has already started trickling into the Merlin engine pumps as the engines are chilling for the start sequence. And we do this because the super chilled and densified liquid oxygen is really, really cold. And we use this process to bring the engine hardware down to a cooler temperature before flowing all of the LOX and propellant into it during flight. At liftoff, Falcon 9 is consuming 700 gallons of fuel per second. So engine chill helps us to prevent thermal shock and ensures nominal engine performance. Shortly, coming up, we should also hear the call out for stage 1 RP1 load completion.
As you mentioned, engine chill is now underway. We're getting ready for those next call-outs that'll be coming up here shortly, as we are now almost 5 minutes away from liftoff, and that's where they're going to configure for terminal count. And that will be a call for Dragon to configure to terminal count and transition into internal power.
Falcon 9 tanks are pressurizing for strong back retract.
And at this point, the Dragon onboard computers
configured for terminal count.
Perfect, right on schedule, and those onboard computers now taking control of the spacecraft. You also heard the call out for pressurizing to give extra structural stability for the rocket as it makes its way uphill. So we're approaching now 4.5 minutes away, and then around that time, you'll hear, you mentioned it there, the strong back retract, and that'll allow provide access to Falcon 9's fueling lines and umbilicals for prop load and a different gases being loaded on board. But right now, everything's starting to wrap up, and Somya, it's exciting to get to this.
Strong back retract has started.
Exciting to get to this point of the countdown. As you heard it right there, the strong back retract is on its way.
So we have a great view on our screen of the clamp arms opening up just around stage 2 under Dragon in preparation for strong back retract. We have some really great views on our screen of that happening right now.
You can see it just moving ever so slightly away from Falcon 9 and the Dragon spacecraft, those clamp arms opening. And again, those late stages, those fuel lines starting to wind down their fueling procedures as we're about to hit T-minus 3 minutes until launch. Second stage loading will wrap up shortly after the first, and you've probably noticed those white clouds venting from around the rocket. That isn't smoke.
Stage 1 LOX load complete.
That's condensation, as stage 1 liquid oxygen loading has been completed. As liquid oxygen warms slightly inside the tanks, some of it boils off, and that gas is vented to manage pressure. When the vented oxygen hits that warm Florida humid air,
in terminal count and on internal power,
it instantly condenses into those clouds. As you just now heard, the Dragon now in prop load complete on into internal power. It's fully fueled. The rocket and Crew 11 are ready for liftoff. And this rocket now transitioning into internal power. The gas closeouts will also begin to purge all the feed lines and allow Falcon 9 to be isolated. And then they'll get vented overboard through the umbilicals and strong back retract.
So coming up in just under 20 seconds, we should hear the call out that LOX load will be completed on stage 2, which will mean that there will be 1 million pounds of propellant loaded onto Falcon 9 at that point. We're coming up on that call out in just a few seconds from now.
Stage 2 LOX load complete.
Now that that's complete, we will vent down the TE, which will produce a white cloud off the side of the rocket, which is totally normal and expected.
Dragon is in auto idle.
Auto idle puts that rocket in a state the flight computers understand before it takes over. And that's making sure the transition to the final countdown is smooth and all the flight computers on board are in sync with each other and configured for launch. We're now 90 seconds away from
Ground
launch.
gas closeouts have started. Expect loud venting.
And there's the gas closeout that Somya was just talking about. And now inside 80 seconds from the launch of NASA SpaceX's Crew 11.
On countdown net, hold. We are standing down for violation of weather rules.
I'll try to sequence is aborted.
So as you've heard over the nets, we did just have a hold called at the T-minus 1 minute mark.
And that hold due to weather, that was something that we've been keeping an eye on. Our team here in SpaceX and Hawthorne, as well as in NASA, we're monitoring that throughout today's broadcast in preparation for launch. But unfortunately, standing down looks to be the case as the weather has created that violation. But we'll continue to monitor and await for the news officially from the teams on the ground as that weather violation looks to come into play for launch today.
Dragon, SpaceX, bad luck on weather there. We just got clipped by a cumulus cloud right over the pad, so ended up scrubbing for weather. With that, you are go to proceed to 5.100 for launch scrub. We'll begin offloading the rocket.
Dragon copies all 5.100. Too bad, but we'll be ready next time.
And there you heard the call up to the crew that unfortunately the weather just not playing alongside with today's excitement of a launch for NASA SpaceX's Crew 11. But we have mentioned a couple times throughout the broadcast today that there are backup opportunities starting as early as tomorrow. 11:43 a.m. Eastern time is what the target time is for tomorrow's next attempt for launch for Crew 11, but it came right down to the wire, Somia, with that T-minus 1 minute. But you heard on the loops there that it was just clipped, as they said, by a cumulus cloud to violate the weather rule. So unfortunately, today's launch attempt has been scrubbed due to weather.
You know, and there are 1,000 different ways that a launch can go wrong, and so we want to ensure the safety and reliability, even if it is a weather scrub. So we will stay with coverage of the crew as we follow them through the egress procedures and make their way back to crew quarters for now.
And you said the key word right there, and that is safety, the safety of the crew and everyone involved on this launch and opportunity, because that's what was talked about even in yesterday's press briefings with all the program managers and representatives of NASA, SpaceX, Roscosmos, and JAXA, is that we'll launch when we're ready and everything lines up the way it needs to be. And unfortunately, due to weather, not the case today. But to recap and look back at everything that Crew 11 has done, they walked right up to the T-minus 1 minute to launch mark as everybody was safe and sound. They went through their procedures earlier today, did soup Leeton checks, also did communications checks, and were able to go all the way to the pad, climb aboard the Dragon spacecraft, and get ready for launch today. But again, unfortunately, due to weather, it will not happen, and we will target that next launch attempt, which again is going to be tomorrow at 11:43 a.m. Eastern time. We will stay with coverage of the crew as we follow them through the egress procedures, getting out of the spacecraft and making their way back to crew quarters. And to do that, we're going to head back out onto the Space Coast of Florida and join Daryl Nail and team as today's launch attempt for NASA's SpaceX Crew 11 has been scrubbed due to weather. Daryl?
All right, thank you, Joseph and Samia. We appreciate your coverage there. And now back here with NASA astronaut Nick Hague. We just returned from being outside. We were planning to watch the launch right there from a nice viewing spot here at the press site, the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. And unfortunately, even as we walked out, Nick, we got a sense that this might not happen because clouds had been building in around the area. We had dark clouds overhead of us. We got up on our area to watch the launch and heard a Phase 1 lightning alert go off. And then I just, my heart kind of sank a little bit because I thought that might be it.
Yep. Then you see the clock stop.
Yes.
And you know it's happened. So it's disappointing, but there's a reason we do it, and that's to keep everybody safe.
It's so critically important. As you look at this shot here, you can see that just right over top, you've got some darkened clouds in the area. This was a result of a sea breeze that when we started the day, the launch weather officer improved our forecast to 90% go, but there was a 10% concern that the sea breeze was going to develop earlier in the day than originally forecast. And that sea breeze, which is very, this is very common here in Florida in July, once that air starts moving over the ocean and onto land and meets the warm air, our blue skies went to cumulus clouds scattered across the spaceport. And we just had one get just inside the 10-mile radius.
Dragon SpaceX, for awareness, we're looking at approximately 50 minutes for the prop offload time. So it should be approximately 1700 UTC when we
Tracking copies. We're looking at about 50 minutes for prop offload, so 1700 ETC for the rest of 5.100 and seat rotation.
Good readback.
And so what does that, real quick, what does that mean, Nick? They are going to rotate the seats?
Yeah, so it's important to know that right now you're looking at a fully fueled rocket with an armed launch escape system. And so the crew is in the same posture that they were in the 45 minutes leading up to launch. They've got to be in that posture until they can offload all that propellant, which takes about the exact same amount of time to offload as it took to put on, as well as disarm that launch escape system. And so this is a very active rocket right now, and they, that launch escape system, if something went wrong, even now it's still protecting them.
It's a great note there that this is very much a dynamic situation even now with a scrub called. The teams have to work through their procedures to safe the launch pad, the rocket, and the capsule from being just minutes from launch. And we were in that posture ready for launch, and now we have to undo that, right?
Yeah,
very carefully. You
got to back out of all of that, and then once the rocket is defueled, we've got all the fuel out of there, we can disarm the launch escape system. You still need the pad team to be able to come and get out there to get into the white room and help open up that side hatch and get the crew out. And so the scrub process is not a quick one.
Just to finish a thought that I had said, and I think this view on the left basically shows you what the issue is. That's rain on the right half of the screen there. That's a rain cloud with rain coming down. And on the left hand, we were dealing with sun poking through the clouds on our side. We could literally see the clouds kind of going over top of our heads, getting close to the pad. And the standoff area is 10-mile radius around the pad for these dark clouds and cumulus clouds. And that is a safety factor. We'll talk a little bit about that. That is because you don't want to send a rocket through a tall cloud like that could generate some energy from the rocket passing through it.
Yeah, just the same as if you're on a commercial airline flight, you don't necessarily want your pilot to take you through a severe thunderstorm. We don't want to do that with a rocket.
And so we are erring on the side of safety in this situation. But as Nick pointed out, the rocket that you are looking at is a fully fueled, ready to launch Falcon 9. As we now see, they are starting to allow some of the liquid oxygen to vent off as they begin detanking the rocket from its super chilled liquid oxygen and its RP1, which is the kerosene-based propellant.
Dragon SpaceX propellant offload update, estimating about 45 more minutes for propellant offload.
Tracking copies. Additional 4 or 5 minutes for prop offload.
Now, as you recall your procedures for the crew, getting out of the capsule and getting back into their vehicles and going back, take me through the timeline of the scrub procedure.
Yeah, it's a fairly straightforward procedure. You're running the launch procedure in reverse, essentially, and so they're strapped in. The seats are rotated up in a launch configuration. As soon as they detank, they're going to disarm the launch escape system. So you're looking at it's 45 minutes to get rid of the liquid oxygen and RP1. Once that's off, then they'll be able to disarm the launch escape system, rotate the seats down. At that point, the arm will come over and the ground team, the pad team, will be able to come up there. They'll open the side hatch and then help them get out of the capsule just like they helped them get into the capsule. So you're looking on the order of, an hour, a little bit longer.
And you want that rocket fully detanked?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You've got cryogenic propellants, oxidizers moving.
flowing.
And you want to make sure that that's all secure before you put people around it. That's the way the system is designed. It's different on other launch vehicles. Other launch vehicles, the Soyuz I launched on was fueled when we showed up to it. But while you're moving the fuel on and off, you minimize the number of people that are around.
That's exactly right. And the SLS rocket is similar in that it gets fully fueled and tanked, and then they bring the astronauts on board. SpaceX does it so they can do that tanking as the very last part of the mission timeline. And this also allows for a quick tanking, relatively speaking, for a rocket. And then allows you to detank it. But they're using super densified liquid oxygen as well. So you mentioned it. High energy systems are engaged here, and so we are now unwinding that as we proceed through the scrub procedure. If you're just joining us, we scrubbed this launch at T-minus 1 minute and 7 seconds until liftoff. We had a healthy rocket, a healthy spacecraft, we had a clear range, and we just had weather in the area, a cumulus cloud that just clipped the radius nearby within the launch area, the 10-mile radius. It got into that standoff area, and that is what caused the scrub for the day, because that is a safety measure to keep the crew that you see on the right side of your screen safe from any potential hazards that could develop as a result of the weather. And this view gives you a clear look at exactly where the clouds ended up now just about 10 minutes after when we were supposed to lift off, right over top of us. They were certainly in the area. We heard the lightning warning go off, and so we knew when we were standing out there watching this launch that that was a bad sign. But it's interesting. I've seen it go both ways, right? Where we get a launch forecast that is 85% no-go, but you find a hole in the clouds that's just 10 miles in radius, and it's all around the launch pad, and you can launch.
Yeah.
This is the opposite of that. We had 90% go with only a 10% chance, but this is Florida in July. These things can pop up literally just from, you know, the daily sea breeze collision that we have over land.
Yeah, weather is dynamic, and we throw a lot of technology at it, we throw a lot of science at it, and it still baffles us sometimes. So the mental shift that you make when this happens, you've got to attempt to not make the mental shift immediately, because it is you know, it is a live launch escape system that you're in, but inevitably there's the, okay, so once we get out of here, what's the next step? When is our next opportunity going to be? They've already been looking at weather predictions for days out, so they understand what the impacts to the phasing and the mission profile might be, the potential for bad weather in the upcoming days, and so they're already starting to think about, okay, so what's the next opportunity, and then having to get into the psyche of, okay, let's do this again, and it is to the T, to the minute, do it again. So it's very much a Groundhog Day.
All of it, every single minute of the, you know, roughly what do we 6-hour countdown where it begins for the astronauts.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned the backup days. Joseph mentioned those before he tossed over to us, but it's worth mentioning again. Our backup opportunities are tomorrow, Friday, with a T0 at 11:43 a.m. Eastern Time. Our coverage would begin at 7:30 a.m. on NASA Plus. The weather for tomorrow is just a little bit better than it was today. But what does that tell you, right? We scrubbed today. It's 85% go. The concern is the same because the same pattern could develop. It's cumulus clouds building up and around the pad. But I will add this. We have moved a little earlier in the day. So the later that sea breeze develops, the better opportunity we'll have for getting some clear weather. If we can't do it tomorrow, then our next opportunity would be Saturday, August 2nd. We'd still have an 85% go for Saturday. Same concern with cumulus clouds here at the launch pad. In both of those cases, well, let me talk about the backup number 2. The T0 for that day would be 11:21 a.m. for a launch, and that would be an instantaneous window. And you can see the pattern. We move about 22 minutes early every single day that we delay from this particular T0 today. And of course, that's orbital mechanics. We've got time. You want to explain that one?
Yeah, sure. So the international. Oh, yeah. No, you got to wait for the plane of the orbit of the station to cross overhead, and it just works out each day that it's a little bit earlier. Unfortunately, if it had come overhead a couple minutes earlier today, they would have been able to launch. The weather would have been clear.
I just mentioned the backup opportunities. One thing about both of these next launch opportunities, unfortunately, we're going to really have our eyes set on the Ascent corridor, because now there is a trough that is approaching a line of storms coming across the eastern part of the U.S., and it is going to make its way out into the ocean, and so that could disturb the weather along the Ascent corridor, which is an area where if Dragon were to suffer some kind of anomaly, something that wasn't expected and needed to come off the top of the rocket, it would splash down along the Ascent corridor. There's concern about the sea states, right? How much it's sloshing around is going to be out there in the ocean. You need good conditions, a baseline of conditions, in order to pull astronauts out of a floating capsule with a helicopter and a boat.
Yeah, it just shows the complexity, the scale of the problem that you're dealing with. It's not a forecast at a particular point, on the surface of the Earth, at the launch pad. It's, if you imagine this 3D trajectory of the rocket's path going up to orbit, you've got to clear all of that for weather, but not just clouds and rain and severe thunderstorms, but like wind shear and drastic changes in the wind direction can create problems for the rocket. And then, in case there was a need to return them early or to abort, you also have to clear the weather on the surface along that path as well. It's just an immense amount of respect for the teams, both at SpaceX and also at the Space Launch Delta 45 over on the Space Force side, the weather shop there, in trying to put their arms around all of this. Like I said, weather is really complex, and they do a fantastic job. But if we got a chance, 90% chance, you take it all the way to the end and see what Mother Nature gives you.
And I'm sure, as an astronaut, when it's your arse in the seat, you want that level of awareness, that level of scrutiny given to the weather throughout the trajectory, throughout the launch area and the launch period?
Oh yeah, you know, the immense respect for them, knowing that their job is watching my back. And
Dragon SpaceX propellant offload update, estimating 37 more minutes for propellant offload.
Dragon copies. 37 more minutes.
the clock ticks slowly.
Hope you got 37 minutes worth of stories, Nick.
But I, you know, like I was saying, it just takes so much to do that when you're sitting in that seat there, if you get the call for a scrub, there's no question. It's, you guys are the experts. This is the safest thing for us to do right now, and you're all in. You're not second guessing.
But you also have that moment, like when we were standing out there, you're like, oh.
There's the disappointment. There's the knowing you're going to have to go through this all again. I mean, the disappointment not just for the crews, but you know, the team that's in quarantine with the crew has got Groundhog Day again. The families, the litany of goodbyes that you'll say again. There's a psychological, emotional toll of going through all of that again, and that's why. You know, earlier on in the broadcast, I mentioned the psych support team that NASA has in place that's there to provide support to the crew members, to the family, is just so important. Even when something like this, you know, relatively minor, not stressful, something happens, there's still an emotional toll, and they're there to support everybody through it. And that's just because NASA recognizes the importance of that kind of support. And so I can't say enough about what they do.
So critical. If you are just joining us, you are watching live coverage of the launch broadcast for NASA and SpaceX's Crew 11. Today we scrubbed the launch attempt due to weather in the area. We had cumulus clouds building up within the standoff zone for weather like that. And as you can see from this shot right here, the weather finally made it right over the pad. And so now, while we have a fueled rocket on the pad and we're looking and in fact detanking at this moment to bring the dynamic nature of the situation out there at the pad down to basically ground zero, reset everything, detank the propellants, offload them, pull the astronauts off and get them back to crew quarters. We look ahead to our next attempt, which is tomorrow, Friday, August 1st at 11:43 a.m. Eastern Time. Our coverage would begin at 7:30 a.m. for what we will now affectionately call Launch Groundhog Day. And you can see there the start time is 7:35 a.m. So it's that'll save you 5 minutes if you want to join us right at that moment. We'd love to see you again.
Yeah.
Nick, we'd love to see you as well.
Absolutely. So, you know, the thing that doesn't diminish is the energy, the excitement, the anticipation. You know, they're going to turn right around. And it'll be there again tomorrow because that's launch day. And that's, you know, you got a crew there, a bunch of professional space flyers, and that's how they approach the job, just like everybody in the profession. Today's launch day, get up for it, and that's what you work for, and all of that passion will be there again tomorrow.
All right, let's toss it back out to our colleagues at SpaceX in California.
Thanks so much, Daryl. So couldn't agree with you both more. What we're doing here is trying to make sure that we are effectively doing the launch procedures in reverse. Right now we're detanking Falcon 9, so we're taking about 1 million pounds of RP-1 and liquid oxygen off the vehicle so that our crew can safely exit the spacecraft. On Monday, our crew actually worked through a dry dress rehearsal. So they went through a lot of the procedures that they did today exactly as they did them today in preparation for launch. Now that we've called that hold due to weather, we're standing down for tomorrow. We're actually just following through with the rest of the dry dress rehearsal procedures. The crew is going to exit or egress the spacecraft, and then, as we were just discussing, go back into that quarantine process. Meanwhile, our teams on the ground are going to go ahead and keep an eye on the health of the vehicle and our crew, of course, but also continue those vehicle side checkouts to make sure that we are ready for that next launch opportunity tomorrow at 11:43 a.m. Eastern. We've got about 30 minutes, a little bit more, waiting on that detanking. And obviously, you've got a view of Crew 11 there on the left-hand side of your screen. And down in the corner, you can see that Dragon spacecraft sitting on top of the rocket, still at LC 39A at Space Force Base in Florida. We're, of course, going to keep following the crew, keep a close eye on them as they follow through these egress procedures, and then make their way back to the crew quarters to maintain that quarantine environment that they've been in now in the lead up to launch for several days. Anytime we have crew on board the vehicle, safety is the most important thing. So while our teams continue through this detanking process, we are also going to continue our coverage and stay with our crew until we know that they have safely departed our launch pad. Of course, one of the other things we'll be keeping an eye on tomorrow is to understand how these weather systems evolve. Anyone who has ever joined us for a launch from Florida or followed along with our coverage of previous missions knows that weather, especially on the Space Coast, can evolve pretty rapidly. So as we're keeping an eye on everything for the next 24 hours or so in the lead up for launch tomorrow, we'll be watching the same things that we were looking at today. We're not just looking at weather at the launch pad either. We're also tracking the entire Ascent corridor and the splashdown locations. In the very unlikely event that for some reason we had to abort our crew in flight, wherever Dragon exits the flight path to with our crew safely inside also needs to be a safe zone for recovery. So especially for these astronaut missions, it's really important that we have good weather kind of around the planet because we are moving so quickly.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Ronnie, as we continue to follow along with today's coverage of NASA SpaceX Crew 11 today and back here in Hawthorne. And you mentioned something that was the biggest key, whether it's prop loading or offloading, the procedures that were needed and required to do so, whether it was the static fire or preparing for actual launch day today. And that is safety. And that goes back to what everybody has been talking about throughout the mission, throughout the broadcast today, but even going into the pre-launch press conference yesterday with all the program managers, representatives from NASA headquarters, the International Space Station Commercial Crew Program, SpaceX, Roscosmos, and JAXA. That was the biggest key for them, is that we will fly when we are ready to fly, whether it's hardware or the weather that surrounds the crew itself. And that is unfortunately what has occurred today with that violation coming in. And to recap, that violation and that hold was called right up at the T-1 minute mark to launch. And there you can see a great view of the Dragon SpaceX spacecraft that is sitting up on top there with Crew 11 still inside. And Ronnie, you mentioned that we still have about half an hour or so for that detanking of the Falcon 9 rocket. There you can see the crew just taking it easy, relaxing. They're just kind of waiting their turn, waiting their time is again to safely prep the rocket. You'll see the crew access arm when the time comes come back into view and connect itself to the spacecraft as well. And then the crew will exit egress and then ultimately make their way back to crew quarters. And that's where we're going to stay with you this entire time and make sure that we have all the visuals to make sure that Crew 11 is safe and sound back in crew quarters. And again, we'll prepare for a launch attempt, which will again be tomorrow. And that's something that the programs talked about yesterday as well, is that unfortunately today did not work out, but we have opportunities, whether they need tomorrow, the 2nd, the 3rd, a stand down day for the 4th, and then beyond. So there's opportunities aplenty. And as Steve Stitch, the program manager for the commercial crew program, mentioned, that it's a good window of chance for this crew to make its way up to the International Space Station and so forth. So that's going to be the big one there. And we take a look at what's to come for NASA's SpaceX Crew 11. As mentioned, that the next launch opportunity will be at 11:43 a.m. Eastern time tomorrow, as we take a look at the launch coverage for NASA Plus. That'll start around 7:35 a.m. Eastern time, and we'll get to hear from Daryl, Nick, and the team as we go through these same procedures and get ready for the next launch attempt. But unfortunately, again, today, due to weather and that cumulus cloud rule that came in right at the T-minus 1 minute mark, right up into the very last moments of the countdown, that hold was called that we heard over the communications loops from the teams here in SpaceX, as well as the NASA teams monitoring closely, standing by as well. And you can see that those clouds are rolling on in over top of the rocket, the spacecraft, and the launch pad itself. So tried to get ahead of it, but unfortunately with the case, we'll try again tomorrow. But so far, everything in terms of the detanking and updates provided regularly with everyone on the loops, the crew being informed, the teams on the ground informed, and communication continuing to roll out as we follow along with the detanking of today's launch attempt for NASA's SpaceX Crew 11. And those on board, which are Commander Zena Cardman and Pilot Mike Fink, those two of NASA, Kimi Yui of JAXA, and Ollie Plotnov.
SpaceX propellant offload update, estimating 25 more minutes for propellant offload.
Dragon copies. 25 minutes for prop offload.
And a great update there that there's still about 25 more minutes left in that detanking of the Falcon 9 before that crew access arm and the procedures to take the crew and egress them out of the Dragon spacecraft can begin. But again, that Crew 11 team, there you can see them sitting comfortably in their chairs, just waiting their time and being patient with the process. Is everything working to maximize the safety of the crew, safety of the vehicle, and the area surrounding the launch pad itself. So unfortunately, again, scrubbing today's launch attempt due to weather, but our next attempt will be coming tomorrow morning at 11:43 a.m. Eastern time, and we look forward to seeing the crew work back to their launch procedures, the teams on the ground. And like Nick mentioned earlier, Daryl and Nick over on the Space Coast, that spaceflight is the ultimate team sport, and you need a lot of teammates to make things like spaceflight and launches happen. And that's what's being enacted right now, unfortunately, due to weather and a scrub. But that put into play with all the procedures needed and necessary. So that is where we are currently standing. So a little inside 25 minutes of the detanking of the Falcon 9 rocket, and we'll continue to follow along through the egress procedures as Crew 11 will then begin to make their way back to crew quarters.
We are...
So, of course, we are disappointed in that weather scrub today. But in a lot of ways, this is actually a really interesting testament to that huge team working together, like you just mentioned. We have, of course, Crew 11 safely on board Dragon and Falcon 9 right now. It's important to note that we had no issues impeding today's launch from either Falcon 9 or the Dragon spacecraft, or any of the ground systems supporting this vehicle. There are a lot of different engineering teams at play here. We obviously have everyone supporting the crew, the ground side teams. All of that was working as expected. Ultimately, the safest way to launch a rocket safely is to have done it before. So the fact that we're able to step through these procedures, we have these critical flight rules about saying when do we know this vehicle is going to be safe to operate, is a really important part of making sure that we execute every mission safely. So even though it is a bummer that we aren't able to go through with launch today, it is a really good sign that we saw no vehicle side issues, everyone working together, and calling it off when that was the right thing to do. So with that, while we continue to monitor this, like we mentioned, we are going to keep our coverage going all the way through until Crew 11 egresses the spacecraft and then exits the pad. But I'll toss it back over to Daryl and Nick for a little while.
All right, thank you very much, Ronnie. Back here at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. And a look out from the press site. When you look out east, looks like a beautiful day. It sure does. And it was. But over top of the land, we had those cumulus clouds bubble up, and they created some storm clouds that got just a little too close to the rocket. So the launch was scrubbed at T-minus 1 minute and 7 seconds. So close, but just not going to take the chance with that kind of weather in the area. Even the local warning system, paging system, let us know that there was a potential for lightning in the area, even as we were at the T-minus 2 mark. So, yes, while everything looks good out over the Atlantic, we continue to have our journey through a hot Florida summer day. We were scheduled for launch at 12:09 p.m. Eastern Time. We had documented the crew getting ready for launch, starting around T-minus 4 hours and 10 minutes. And we walked that journey from suit up to drive out. We saw the crew ascend the launch tower there, get up to the top of the launch tower, get into their spacecraft, and prepare for launch. And all the systems, the high energy systems that came online, methodically going through the launch operations until we reached T-minus 1 minute and 7 seconds, and then we got the call for the scrub. Launch weather officer David Tager kept the launch team informed of the developing situation and let them know that the sea breezes could be forming this mix of excuse me, cumulus clouds that we see in and around the area. And so now we have a dynamic situation on the pad, and the reason that we are still here is because we still have astronauts inside that capsule right there. 4 crew members, Zena Cardman, pilot Mike Fink, Kimiya Yui, and Oleg Platonov, who appears to be taking a nap. I would. I mean, at this point, what else are you going to do?
You got to wait for him to detank, and so that takes a little bit. It's actually fun. Some of the shot of the rocket that you see, the side view, it's almost like a fuel gauge because you can see where the frost is melted off of the side of the rocket and determine how much of the fuel is left in that first stage.
Yeah, that's a great shot. If we can take that wide shot there, that it almost serves as kind of a detanking gauge to see where the frost line is.
There you go. We're about halfway.
Yep, they're about halfway. Yeah, and it's going down. And they recapture that LOX and that fuel, of course, for the next attempt. You lose a bit of LOX because, after all, that stuff boils off.
Yeah, and that's why they wait to load it until so late,
right?
Because it's so cold. It starts to warm and expand and boil off, and you don't want to waste it.
So the question now becomes, or the question that I will ask now is, what do the astronauts do after they get out of their capsule and go back to the astronaut crew quarters? This kind of served like a dress rehearsal. They have now had 2 of them, which is good practice for an operation like this. But you don't need to practice anymore. So what do?
Yeah, so you're gonna get out of the capsule. Everything runs in reverse all the way back to the ONC building to crew quarters. You're gonna get out of your suits. The suit techs are going to get those all cleaned up so that you're ready to try again tomorrow. And then I guarantee you that all 4 of them, the first thing on their mind is, okay, so when are we having the meeting to talk about, is tomorrow a viable launch opportunity? Is the weather good? Are the systems good? Is the phasing work so that we can get to where we need to be? Is that good? And then get the thumbs up to press for tomorrow. Or if things aren't lining up right, then when is the next opportunity after that? And, of course, they're going to be checking in with family. I imagine they're probably going to be checking in with family on the ride back to ONC.
Absolutely. And have also heard, and I have seen crews do in the past, check out what's the schedule at the beach house. Because, it might be an opportunity to go out there and kind of take the stress of the day and the scrub off for just a few hours.
If you're Yeah, if you're trying again tomorrow, then there's probably
not enough time.
Not enough time. You may want to try to tag up with family again. And if you're going to scrub and it's going to be a few days, then you can, hey, let's just have a quiet evening and step away from the crew quarters, go out to the beach house, put your feet in the ocean.
So too quick of a turnaround.
Yeah,
in this case.
It can be. It can be.
So in that case, maybe, since there's 4 of them, they, just have a little bit of a pickleball match, kind of let off some steam, and then get back to quarantine.
No, maybe not any athletic events. We don't want to risk any late injuries prior to launch.
I hear that, it's a pretty somewhat safe sport, but you're right. It is a sport at the end of the day. Jessica Meir and Christina Cook, they played pickleball.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
I have not got into that yet.
Your fellow astronauts. Yeah.
I'll have to pick their brains on the finer nuances of pickleball rules, because something about there's a kitchen involved, and there's
lots of rules.
There's lots of rules.
Well, we have a crew that plays here, Nick, and in fact, after our launch broadcast here, we're going to be going out. So if you want to learn,
okay,
you're welcome to join us.
Thank you for the invite.
In the 90-degree heat.
Still a beautiful rocket.
It is indeed, and it's going to stay there overnight. It can rain on the rocket. That's not a problem. We can have storms in the area. That's not a problem. After we detank it, of course. While we're sitting here and we've got folks watching, why don't we take some social questions?
Sounds great.
All right, let's do it. If you're just joining us, we scrubbed our launch earlier today at 12:08 p.m. Eastern Time, T-minus 1 minute and 7 seconds. Our question comes from Hey Aviate. I want to be an astronaut. Any advice that will be really helpful apart from the usual requirements? I'm going to assume the usual requirements would be a STEM background, right? Science, technology, engineering, or mathematics. But what gives people an edge these days? Because it's so competitive, Nick. Let's be honest.
It is.
It's highly competitive. How many people in the astronaut corps?
Less than 50.
Right.
Yeah. In each class, there's maybe 10,000 applications for a dozen spots.
10,000 applications.
So it is very difficult. The minimum requirement is you need a STEM master's degree. Okay. And so you've got to get that foundational educational baseline. Yeah. So there's lots of things that you wouldn't necessarily think about that get evaluated. For example, we're watching Crew 11 here. They've been strapped into these seats for about 3 hours now. They've got another 30 minutes or so. And so patience and the ability to have enough personal discipline to be able to sit still and wait for long periods of time. It's some of those soft skills, the interpersonal skills, how you manage yourself, how you manage your interactions with the people on your team, that are really important when we bring people in for interviews and we look how they interact, because you're going to be in tight, confined places with your crewmates, and it's going to be stressful situations, and how do you manage that stress, and so those are things that are tough to put on a resume, but they really come out when you start to evaluate candidates that come down and interview for the job.
That's so key, and that's something I've observed with many of the astronauts who I've had the honor and the privilege to do launch broadcasts with. As we look at a screen that can show us, if you look closely, Nick, you can see the rain coming down now out there at the launch pad.
Oh yeah, you can.
So it did finally rain on the rocket. This is a sun shower though at the moment, because the sun is shining on that rocket at the same time. They got a little rain coming down. But to the point that you were talking about, those soft skills, after having done a number of launch broadcasts with astronauts, it's like almost every single one of them easy to get along with, super smart, adapts to situations real quickly. I see these common characteristics in everybody. I say almost all because, well, you know.
Some people you have to put up with. I apologize.
You know, the jury is out. The jury's still out on this one. No, I tease greatly. This has been nothing but a pleasure since Nick walked in the door yesterday and we did our launch broadcast debrief. It's really great having you. It really, truly is.
You know, so the advice I would give somebody is, how do you develop that? Because you can develop those soft skills. And it's trying to step out of your comfort zone. And you know, you become more adaptable if you've been in different situations, and try to figure out how to expand your comfort zone, and then trying to just be a great teammate. You don't always have to be the leader, you don't always have to be the follower, but what does my team need me to do? And you know, those simple things, if you focus on that over years, and it takes decades to grow into the people we select, you can get to where you need to be.
If you're seeking fame and glory, if that's the reason that it sparks you.
Wrong profession.
Wrong profession. That's right.
I think I said it earlier. It's not about this sport is not about individuals.
That's right.
It's team. And
that was never better exemplified recently in our commercial crew, and this is just an example that we're aware of, but Zena Cardman, the commander who's aboard the rocket and spacecraft today, her standing down and supporting you and your team when you launched after she got pulled off that mission. Another question in from Aqua. What does it feel like when the rocket is launched? We talked a little bit about this earlier in the broadcast, but this is like, talk me through like real, like, give me some sensory detail here.
Yeah, sure.
What are the feels?
Yeah. Before I do that, I want to double down on your last comment and just say, you know, so we put the spotlight on Zena because she's the one strapped into a rocket today. You know, Stephanie Wilson did the exact same thing, and I'm equally excited to see her strap into a rocket and get her flight. They are the epitome of the professionalism that the astronaut corps strives to be.
100%.
Yeah. So what's it feel like to so as you're walking to, we'll just take it, you push space on the elevator.
Going from the very beginning.
Absolutely. You ride the elevator up, and it's actually, the elevator goes fast enough that your ears pop, because you're going up a lot of floors of stairs, so you'll feel the pressure change in your ears, just like if you were in a big skyscraper and, you know, going from the bottom to the top. Huh. And then you step out of the elevator, and then, you know, it's just this, for me, it was this gentle breeze coming off the ocean, because you're so high up, you just get this nice cool breeze, and it's just green as you look out, green, and then the blue of the ocean, and then, you know, it's this metallic structure that's there, and, you know, so the launch tower doesn't really sway or anything, it's so beefy, you can see it there in the photo. And then you get into the gantry arm and you start walking out to the capsule, and then you know, you're surrounded by this, you know, this visual of this tube leading you to where you want to go, and so then that's where like emotion starts to color how you're seeing everything, and the white room is chilled down, it's cool, so that the vehicle's cool, and you climb in, and as soon as you cross that threshold of the side hatch, it feels, you know, before it was like you've done it once, maybe twice, and it's unfamiliar, but it's still, you know, sensory overload to some degree. As soon as you get inside the capsule, you've trained for so long, it feels like home. You know, it's like you've spent, everything's exactly where it should be, and you feel comfortable, and so then, you know, the side hatch closes, and then at prop loading, that's really where, like I mentioned before, the rocket comes to life. The pumps start spinning up. You can hear the fuel flowing. You feel the vibrations. You get venting that's happening, and that's why when you feel like, so I'm on a thing. I'm not on a machine. I'm on this thing that's got a personality, that's got this life inside of it. And then at the moment of liftoff, there's just, the engines light up and you get this subtle vibration and you feel the pressure of your body being pushed into your seat. Just, your back is being pushed in, and it's that all the the millions of pounds of thrust that are happening, and it's just squeezing you in that seat, and it's just continuing to push you in that seat as you kind of creep off it's smooth. And so if you've been in an electric car and somebody just kind of slowly presses the accelerator and then just keeps mashing it until it's all the way down, eventually you're pressed into your seat and you're accelerating, and it's like that, but you don't stop for 9 minutes. And you go
the
from
feeling of acceleration goes that long.
You've got staging in the middle, so it starts at 1G, and then you build up to 4.5, and then it drops off during staging to nothing for a few seconds, and then it starts back up again and builds up, and then it stops and you're in space. And so those 9 minutes are just this amazing roller coaster ride that is like super smooth, with a little bit of vibration, and the whole time you've got these windows that you can look outside and watch it all happen as the Earth kind of disappears down below. And it's just phenomenal. I wish everybody could do it.
No doubt. I wish I could do it. That is, what a great explanation of what you experience from beginning to end. If you're just joining us, we are live with launch coverage of NASA and SpaceX's Crew 11. The launch of the International Space Station scrubbed for the day. You see the weather in the area caused a scrub at T-minus 1 minute and 7 seconds, just at 12:08 p.m. Eastern Time. The crew is inside the capsule at the top. They are safe. They are waiting for the completion of detanking the rocket of its highly energetic propellants, which we are currently doing now. Just should be just another 15 minutes or so. Our next attempt for today's launch, provided that after they review the data from today's scrub, should all that look good and check out, the next opportunity to launch is August 1st at 11:43 a.m. Eastern Time. Weather for tomorrow is 85% go. The only area that is a watch item, that is a significant watch item, is the weather that's going to be disturbed along the eastern seaboard after we get a trough of disturbances make their way into the eastern Atlantic.